keeping up the encouragement for people to, wash their hands, stay safe. Don't be afraid. Reach out, connect, and be helpful to others. So we're hearing lots of good stories of encouragement. And for the entrepreneurial spirit in East Zorra, all good news. Some people, business twice what is normal. And certainly there are some that are hurting because they've been shut down, but those that have been resourceful have come through it. Some of the farming challenges seem to be worked out. There was some dumping milk early on Easter time, and now that's all cleared. And so they're actually looking to steady supply, meeting demand. So all good news there. Some people, business twice what. So are we good, Will?
You're good.
All right, so it is 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Any opening comments? Seeing none, a resolution to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Moved by Councillor Rudy, seconded by Councillor Schaefer.
Moved by Councillor Rudy, seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Be it resolved that Council approve the agenda for the May 20th, 2020 meeting as printed and circulated.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, a resolution to approve the minutes of our last meeting. Moved by Councillor Lupton, seconded Deputy Mayor Edmonston.
Moved by Councillor Lupton, seconded by Deputy Mayor Edmonston. Be it resolved that Council confirm the minutes of the May 6th, 2020 Council meeting as printed and circulated.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. And then, Will, do you want to highlight the opportunity for the AMO virtual conference?
So obviously a new feature, new function this year, given the current pandemic. AMO intends to offer its conference virtually this year by electronic means. For those that had signed up, we didn't have anybody that had signed up yet. Those that had signed up, certainly they're willing to put the money towards that conference. I think it would be a small refund given the new price. Obviously, no transportation or hotel costs, but it is virtual. The costs, and I had looked into it, I think it was about $600. So certainly not free, but at the same time, again, you're not paying for hotel or mileage.
So is anyone interested in attending, joining in on that conference?
Well, I'm curious about it, quite honestly, to see how it does work, whether I'm not very good at that sort of thing. I was saying before the meeting that I can work better in an office than I can at home. So I'm interested to see how it does work. I think there could be some advantages to it, and there certainly are disadvantages.
Mm-hmm. And the biggest part of conference is that interaction, the people that you meet in a workshop, then to have a 5-minute discussion with afterwards.
Yeah.
That's going to be missing for sure. Content-wise, we get the AMO updates every week. So it's hard to think that there would be something new that you won't get through other correspondence. And then as Councillor Lupton has said, is the interaction. That's so important, that ability to ask questions. But yes, the curiosity of, can it happen? I think Deputy Mayor Edmonston, you would attest, you can run classes and get good participation through online means.
I was just saying before the meeting, I had about over 40 kids last night. 2 screens of kids on the TV. Had to flip from screen to screen.
Right.
It was good. It went really well.
So, but then to translate that into a 3-day.
Yeah, that could be tough.
Yeah. You know, a 1-hour seminar is good, but to extend that out would certainly have its challenges there. But it would be good if someone could attend, but we don't have to determine that right now. I think the information's there in front of us. And so we'll leave it. If someone is interested, just let Will know and we'll add it to our next agenda and get you registered for that. No delegations, conferences, seminars. I don't think there's anything to update. County Council.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
It's about this busing service that there's quite a bit of talk about that. One of the questions is what happened to the north end? Like, are there no buses coming to Hickson, Tavistock? Can you update on this?
Can we have Karen respond, seeing as she knows the most of any of us?
Okay.
So we can't hear you yet, Karen. Just tap every corner of your screen and
there we go. Sorry, my mouse was on a different screen. So there has been a preliminary phone call. So originally there was a discussion about transit through the Stratford connection. That did not happen. They did not include a Tavistock stop in that plan for them. They're trying to keep it intra-community right now, as opposed to extending into Oxford County. There now has been discussion, and the county is taking the lead on coordinating an effort to work on the north side of the 401, potentially including Blandford, Blenheim, Zorra, and ourselves in a northern connection. There's really not much in terms of route planning. They're going to be speaking to the potential proponents that might be interested in providing that type of service, and then what kind of guarantees would need to be put in place to make that happen. But I think the next steps after the phone call that we had as East Zorra-Tavistock with the county was that we would look to having a more fulsome discussion with our partner neighbors, our Zorra and Blandford specifically, to find out what their interest is. I believe that Dawn and I can both say that we know that Zorra is very interested in some sort of connectivity, but I'm not sure that Blandford Blenheim had been reached out to at the time that we had our call. So that was going to be the next step, was to reach out to Blandford Blenheim, find out what their interest was, and then coordinate a 3 municipality CAO mayor meeting with the 3 northern municipalities.
So would it then be going to Woodstock, or is it just going to be in that area of the 3 municipalities?
Again, there wasn't much specific discussion about where the stops would be, how many there would be, what the ridership would be. Rather, there was mostly just a confirmation that we would be interested in exploring that kind of opportunity, and then determining whether that would be Chelmsford, Embro, Woodstock, Innerkip, Tavistock. That was still kind of up in the air.
Okay.
Fair to say, Don?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lupton, for the question. Huge concern, as you're well aware, the provincial allocation of monies and where it went really left the north without. So there's some potential for reach out Chelmsford toward London, but that doesn't help the north of Zorra or any of East Zorra. Tavistock. And then where do we connect? Do we want to connect to Woodstock? Do we want to connect to Stratford? Blandford Blenheim, they're more interested connecting through to the Waterloo region. So the good part is nothing's been predetermined. That really the county through David Simpson, Director of Public Works, is coordinating that. And I would be happy to have you sit with Karen representing East Zorra-Tavistock to further the discussions. And again, because of your work with Zorra, to fully appreciate it's a challenge and we want to make it the most helpful. If we can get people to the connection. If you can get people to New Hamburg, then they can get connected with the Waterloo region. If we can get people to Stratford, same thing. It opens up a bigger window. Similarly, we don't want to make 10 stops in Woodstock. Let's get them to 1 and then use the Woodstock transit to allow them to move around. So lots of moving pieces, but there's commitment to ensure that a coordinated voice happens. But yes, my time is getting harder to pencil out. So if Councillor Lupton, you were interested, then I'm sure Karen would keep you advised and invite you to the meetings.
All right, yeah, there is a real need for it for some people. The thing is whether it has to be viable or not. I don't know if they'll ever get that kind of coverage, but there are people really needing that connection.
That's right, and with the funding available, that's one of the first questions. Being as there are some that have plans in process, then we've got a lot to be able to see what are their numbers for cost, what is their break-even point, etc. So in some ways, we're a little more able as a municipality to say, what are we willing to invest? Because it won't be the whole thing. And if we can see the potential for that break-even point with the providers, then that's very encouraging for us. And you would have a better handle in Tavistock. Are there, 10 people that would get on and go to Stratford? Are there 10 people that would come to Woodstock? That's really where that gut feel has to be, is the need. And then when we establish need, to make sure that the service is reasonable. If you're looking to transport seniors, don't have them come at 7 in the morning and return them at 7 at night. Like it's got to be practical as well. So
is it going to be a service based on need, like take people to appointments? I mean, some of the comments that I've had with people are people who would be interested in just getting on the bus and going for a ride for the day, and I don't know if you're just looking for people who are going to specific appointments.
I think, Karen, it's a dedicated route that would try to connect you with the local transit to then get you around, but there might be flexibility.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor. I think where I think we would be at. So once there's a buy-in amongst the northern partners that we think it is something our municipalities would be interested in. I think the next phase after that David referred to was more of like a survey, if you will, to say, okay, if this was to be available, when would you like to use it? How long? What time of the days would work for you? Where is your ideal, get off point and get on point kind of thing? And then that would then give a little bit of more breadth of information as to whether we're going to try to get people to London to give them access to more services. Are they satisfied getting to Woodstock and what they can see in Woodstock? Do they want to, as Dawn said, there was definitely, obviously there's a feeling that the further west you go, you probably are aiming for London. The further east you go, you might be aiming for Kitchener-Waterloo. I know Tavistock residents often go to Stratford, but then you might see Innerkip people wanting to go to Woodstock. So I think the first phase is to make sure we're all in it together. And then the second phase is, where are we going with it? Like what does our public want?
Okay. Good. All right, thank you for that input and great question discussion. So if you can follow up, Karen, I don't think Mr. Simpson would be upset as long as he's got a couple of voices from EZT on participating, that'll give him what he wants. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, then the Hickson Trail Committee minutes. Any questions or discussions there? Councillor Rudy, anything to add? Go ahead.
Comment. This committee's been pretty active in the spring. It's everybody's finding that the trail, the Hickson to Woodstock Trail, is really busy. A lot of uses. I've been on the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 times, and you're always meeting families out for a walk. In the day of COVID, it's something to do that's not, you can't go to a park, you can't play sports, so it's taking the kids and the dog for a half mile or a mile walk from one end to the other. Drive by the Bromar change there, there's probably 3 or 4 vehicles all the time parked at those little offsides. Part of the committee has been really actively involved in putting together, trying to save costs, trying to do a lot of stuff themselves. Well, this is an aging group of volunteers, growing significantly. One of the recent volunteers has offered to cut the grass for the cost of fuel for the season. I think he started cutting maybe last weekend, and that's 2 or 3 times a year just to get the grass mowed down. One of the issues that's come up at the last meeting is there's a piece of trail kind of behind your farm, Mayor McKay. It's probably 100 yards long. It's fairly soft and wet, muddy in the spring this time of year. The group want to put some gravel down on it. They're looking for some help on probably 2 or 3 dump truck loads of gravel. I've suggested we could offer that to them. And they were going to load it onto a small trailer that I think Ross Campbell has and haul it down and manually spread 40 or 50 tons of gravel. I think that's a pretty big undertaking for a group of volunteers to get done in a timely manner. So I talked to Karen today a little bit about it, but I would like to suggest that the township, this is a township asset that's becoming more widely known and appreciated, that perhaps we could somehow deliver the gravel and even send I think we have a rubber tire backhoe just to haul it down the trail. It's a little bit narrower there. I don't think the large loader would get down the trail, but move it down and let the volunteers kind of level it and spread it from a perspective. So I don't know the thoughts of council on this, but I don't think the cost is very much. I think the trail is an asset for East Zorra-Tavistock. And if the committee didn't do it as volunteers, I think the township would be doing it with our own resources to make this happen. So I appreciate their concern with keeping costs low. So they're asking for help. I think that's an admirable quality to try not spend money wastefully. They're looking for low prices. I think we spent close to $2,000 cutting grass last year. This year it might cost us a couple $100 or something. So they're looking to keep costs down. The volunteers are busy collecting garbage, trimming the trail. I think the last meeting we talked about some significant costs of moving trees. I know Mayor McKay's son and grandson have volunteered to help get some of those hanging trees out of the way. But after the committee or some of the more seasoned guys in the committee walked the trail, I think a couple hours later they cut the logs off and the trail was open. There was no issue. So from going to a potential cost of thousands, it cost nothing to have it kind of looked after. So this committee is pretty active on the trail. So I think we want to appreciate their efforts on our behalf.
Good, and thank you, Councillor Rudy, and especially for reaching out to Karen. What resources can we provide? Yeah, it really wasn't a budgeted item, but as we've worked with the Optimists and the Optimist Park, it's a great venture. They have all their resources, and yes, it costs us as a municipality, but pennies on the dollar compared to if we tried to do it ourselves. So what can we do to help? That wet spot, the other solution is a small backhoe to open up the ditch, because that's why the water sits.
I think that's the issue. We could ditch a little bit along there. It would go away quickly.
And that's the challenge. How do you get rid of that material. You still have the same as getting gravel in is taking that mud out. But
You'd probably just cast it into the side. The right of way is fairly, I don't know what the right of way width is.
66 feet. So there's lots of room there
Probably just throw it up onto the
bank. Yeah.
get a little bit of a ditch on the side of it, because the trail is only, I think, 2 meters wide, so 6 or 8 feet wide. You
Yeah.
throw it up into the bank, that lets the trail be drained. So
Yeah.
a little bit of backhoe work would be an asset as well.
Right. So I would suggest, again, through the yourself to the committee, working with Karen, does Tom have an opportunity to take a look or send one of his guys and with the backhoe, what could be done? That would be a great opportunity. And again, keeping the cost, even if those costs are charged from the township to the trail committee, it's still that efficiency of getting it done. But I can't agree with you more. The use is very high. There's often, 3 up to 10 vehicles parked on Vermar. I'm not sure, Karen or Will, are you getting any concerns from Public Works about vehicles parked being a problem?
No, not from my vantage point, no.
Yeah. So I think that speaks well to previous efforts of when they rebuilt the road there to make sure it was wide enough that there can be vehicles parked on the side. So that's great. And they're out for long walks. It's not just a 10-minute look and see. So well done to them, and do pass on our appreciation. Any other comments on the trails then? Don, Deputy Mayor Edmiston.
Are you allowed to ride bicycles down the trail too, or is it walking only?
Well, bicycles are quite common.
Okay, I wasn't sure because the neighbor told me he rode his bike down it yesterday and it's really nice. He enjoyed it. And I'm like, oh yeah,
No,
better make sure you can ride bikes down it.
no motorized vehicles, no ATVs or motorcycles.
I haven't seen a bike when I've been walking on it, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, moving on the agenda then, COVID updates. Do we want to start, Karen? What's been happening in the world of East Zorra and our surrounding neighbors?
Okay, so for those of you who haven't been able to come into the office, we are fully operational. We have plexiglass barriers on the front counters that were constructed by Connor. They are exceptional. We have our summer student in place at the front counter. She started on Tuesday. She is a young lady in the business program at Laurier University. She has an interest in accounting, so she's got a good head on her shoulders, it appears. She's had a couple days of training. Then we also have our engineering technologist starting next Monday. Her name is Claire, and Courtney is the young lady at the front counter. Claire will be starting on Monday down in the downstairs office. We've had to do a little bit of rejigging to make sure that we have the appropriate distancing between people when they are in the office together. We're sanitizing and cleaning the office every morning and afternoon as well, all the touch surfaces. So we're following all of the office opening guidelines, but we are definitely ahead of the curve in Oxford County for being open and abiding by all the requirements for the office. Everybody was provided with their own personally made mask by Sherry Wilker. She did an amazing job, and we all have our masks to wear when social distancing isn't an option, but by no means are they mandatory on staff. Now, with regard to some of the financials, we had our first senior staff meeting we've had in, what has it been, 2.5 months, Will, since we last were able to meet together as a fivesome. So we met social distanced in our boardroom, everybody at a corner of the table. And we had our first senior staff meeting, and I told them that I needed them to go over each their departmental COVID situation. So Roads is working, Public Works is working business as usual. They are working out of 2 shops. The only real hiccup with that is mobilization time. It takes them a little bit longer to get from one end of the township to the other if they're coming from different, whether they're coming out of Tavistock or coming out of Hickson. But other than that, Tom hasn't seen any level of service changes. We're literally completely on schedule with regard to dust control being, dust suppressant being laid by the end of next week. Grading's already been done. Our summer student is in cutting grass already. So we're on schedule in public works. And the only additional costs that really have been experienced are related to, again, the masks were donated by Sherry Wilker. We didn't compensate her. She didn't want to be compensated. She donated them to everybody. We've had to buy a little bit of extra sanitizer and wipes for the trucks. Each truck is being occupied by only one person at a time. And if at any time they have to be in a truck together, they have the mask that's been supplied, and each person has their own individual mask. The only other cost has been about $1,500 for signage. And that was the signage that was put up in our playgrounds and park areas. Subsequent to, or since May the 19th, we've actually removed the open space signage and simply focus on our playground signage remaining in place, because all sports fields are open to the public now as of midnight on Tuesday, or well, midnight on Monday. So Tom hasn't seen any significant fluctuations in cost, good or bad, other than the $1,500 for signage and somewhere just below $2,000 for extra sanitizers and wipes, etc. I'm going to skip recreation. Building is actually significantly ahead of where they were last year. When I ran the building report, John is actually about $15,000 ahead of where he was in May of 2019. As far as revenue is concerned, and no additional expenses in his area. He said the only problems that they might see, and I'm looking at the telecommunications budget, but I haven't seen it hit yet, is related to having to have their phones forwarded when they were working from home. If they were receiving calls, they were long distance at times. So they might have some long distance charges on their cell phone and data related to having to be out in the field. But my understanding is that data overages might be being waived as well. So we haven't seen any expense overages in the building department at all. And as a matter of fact, we're ahead in revenue. With regard to corporate services, again, we haven't had any issues. There's no additional expenditures outside of the additional cleaning that's required. We are having our cleaner come in every night, as opposed to every other night right now, just to make sure that the office gets a complete wipe down for the next day's business. As far as finance or general government is concerned, we started off strong this year with our interest revenue from our bank account looking really ahead of schedule. However, Stephanie did me a lovely graph, and I'll show it, although I can't put on the screen. Our interest revenue for the month of May that we received on May 1st is actually $10,000 less than we received last year on May 1st. Not because our bank account is any less fruitful, but rather because the interest rate dropped over 1.5% on our bank account. So I did a projection. We are currently sitting at $77,846 of our $132,000 budget. So we're just over 58% of the way through. But if the $6,900 is a projection out to the end of the year, we'll have about a $12,000 shortfall in our interest revenue account. Again, if the interest rate stays as flat as it is right now. So and then with regard to penalty and interest on taxes, we did waive April's penalty and interest, which cost us about $5,000. So we were $5,000 less in revenue than we would have got in April. In May, however, it's only $1,300 less than it would have been if we'd have charged penalty interest on taxes. When speaking with Sherry Matheson, she indicated that we've only had one taxpayer who has withdrawn from their pre-authorized payment plan. And as a matter of fact, what she's seeing actually is a lot of people coming in to settle up their tax account in advance of the installment date next week. We've even had a couple of arrears customers come in and pay off their arrears outstanding. So we're not seeing any impact or any pressure at all that council should be feeling with regard to taxes. Everything seems to be on the go-ahead plan. We're not going to be looking to change the installment date. We are not going to be deferring our payment to the county or our payment to the school board, as our cash flow position is still strong. And we're exactly where we thought we would be cash flow wise. So most of the budgets are looking good. The only one that I saved to last is recreation. So we did a whole bunch of forecasting on recreation in particular, because obviously with, particularly with Tavistock, with the arena being closed now for a couple of months and the Braves looked like they were having a really strong season, we wanted to compare our revenues with the Tavistock District Rec area. And our revenues are currently $69,000 below where they were at this time last year. But that's offset by a $35,000 savings in expenditures over last year. So the net difference is about $35,000 that we are currently in a shortfall position. And again, when I projected those numbers out to year end, again, and I did a projection of how much revenue would be projected to come in between May 21st and September 1st, assuming that that might be the time before the fall season might kick in and the arena would ramp up again. We generated $50,991 last year between May 21st and September 1st in the Tavistock District Rec area, between hall rentals and arena receipts, etc. So if you added that 50,000 to the 35 that we're currently already in the hole, knowing that there's going to be also savings and operating costs, because the arena definitely is seeing a significant savings in expenditures related to water and wastewater. Our water and wastewater bill changed from May 1st last year to May 1st this year was over $500 difference. So we are seeing savings on the expenditure side. And again, most recreation programs run at a deficit anyway. However, when I'm comparing it to budget, what we budgeted to generate, I suspect we will have a shortfall in recreation this year, especially depending on how long this COVID crisis keeps us shut down. Sports fields are not allowed to be open for team sports at this time. They're open to the public to access in small groups, less than 5, but we are not renting those to anybody. So if I was going to hazard a guess, I would say that Tavistock will see a very limited amount of revenue, if any, for the summer season, unless baseball decides to have some sort of a season and they're given permission to go ahead with that. My recommendation to the group would be at this time, just to keep in mind that we also have $110,000 budgeted to transfer to reserves this year for the Tavistock District Rec area alone. So to me, my recommendation as the treasurer would be at this time that we would hold off on making those transfers until we see how full our budget becomes. And then we would make the necessary transfers that were available based on whatever funding we would have that was not projected to be received. So again, there's room within the transfer budgets to understand that this is an anomaly year, and we would then make our capital plan based on the fact that this year was a year where we weren't able to make a full contribution to the reserve. The other thing to bear in mind is if we do go ahead with a Parks and Recreation master plan, that would also give us a better idea of what level our transfers are supposed to be at anyway, as far as roof replacements and building replacements and facade replacements and potential expansions or whatever. We don't have that kind of guiding document right now, and a master plan would give us some direction to aim for. So that's another reason why I would suggest that one of the places that we can buffer the recreation losses would be in the transfers that are projected. Now, with regard to Interkip Community Center, we're only $1,000 behind where we were last year in revenue. And over the summer months, they only took in an additional $6,000. So Right now, we're sitting at 40% of our revenue budget for the ICC as projected at the beginning of the year. So that's pretty close to where we should be right now. Anyway, now again, the community center is not open to the public right now, so we are not generating any revenue, and all events have been canceled thus far up to the end of June. So we're hoping for more direction. Again, the emergency orders were extended to May 29th. So we're wondering what that means for June, but right now we can only work with what we've been given, and we're getting a lot of that information, 2 days in advance of when things are happening. So we were told on Thursday about the changes that were coming on Saturday, and potentially on a Tuesday morning at 12:01. So we're doing the best we can to keep up with the province's changes, but again, as an entity of the province, we're reacting. Because we're not on the front line as far as where they're going directionally, and we don't see the numbers before they see them. But overall, I would say that East Zorra-Tavistock, we've taken an open for business approach from the get-go. The leadership that I was, given even by the mayor himself was that, we're open for business. We're going to work within the means and the requirements of the regulations and the guidelines set out by the province. And we've done all of that. And I think we've come through it very strong. Staff are happy to be back to work in the office at all times, similar to what Councillor Lupton said. We work best when we're at work. And we feel like we're not in a bad position financially. We're certainly not in any way, shape, or form in a position that as your treasurer that I would be concerned about. The recreation downturn right now is obviously something we're going to have to keep a close eye on, but it's really beyond our control at this point.
Okay, questions, Councillor Rudy?
Just as a comment, the Tavistock Braves are part of the Provincial Junior Hockey League, PJHL. They're looking, as a league, looking at putting together a season that potentially could start November 1st if they were given 2 weeks notice. So just as comment to the rec budget, that would be at least a 2-month delay to where they would typically start 1st of September. So it may, and I'm skeptical even that that'll happen November 1st. So just as an idea where we see it from a sporting association where that kind of activity is going to happen, and it's going to be not better than that.
All right, thank you. Other question or comment? So again, I would echo appreciation to pass on to all your staff, Karen and Will, that job well done. And again, on the conference calls with the other mayors, CAOs, and they're all talking about ramping up to reopen. And it's like we've never closed. And yes, people have been working from home, but the only difference is where they're working from. They have worked every day and very productively. So well done. And it's been interesting to watch what others, and then the difficulty of getting the plexiglass barriers. And as Karen has said, you have the resources right amongst your own team, and great Connor has that ability, but he has more than that, the willingness to serve as part of the team. And for Sherry to do the masks, same thing, just outstanding job caring for each other. And I think that carries through then to how you do customer service. So, and do pass on our welcome to our 2 new students, and hopefully we'll get a chance to meet them and encourage them as well. Councillor Rudy, another comment?
Just a question. So our from a public works perspective, our gravel tender went out. I remember seeing going a couple weeks ago. We had no issues with the product or performance, or I assume that's all completed for putting calcium down by the end of next week. So.
Yeah, Tom was very satisfied with what he'd seen, and that we had good success with them. He was very happy with the results, and again, the costs were good. So Tom is saving us money on the other side of our where we might see some shortfalls as well.
Okay, good.
Great.
Oh,
Okay.
one more question.
Sorry, go ahead.
The new office, is it still on a stall pattern? Are we going to move forward with it, even though, because COVID could be around for another, who knows, a year? So is it something we want to be proceeding with, or what's your thoughts or opinion?
So I'll speak, and Will can help me out too. I think we actually had a because we had our first senior staff meeting again in a couple of months. We had a big discussion about that as well. We want to be cognizant of the optics of proceeding with a new construction in the midst of times when other people might be struggling. But that being said, we also have some spacing contingencies based on the property across the road. So the Public Works Department is going to need a salt and sand shed sooner than later. And we know that our priority on 89 Levies is the actual office building first. So we're going to need to at least be able to do some sort of design work to know what the layout of that property is going to look like, and that there is room for the salt and sand shed and where that would be exactly. So even if the design work went forward for the building and we had a layout, we have had the survey done, so we definitely know what the context of the property is over there. So we're looking now to at potentially splitting the work between a design phase where we would RFP for a design service that would look at the whole parcel and make recommendations about layout and where the buildings would be and what size they would recommend based on X number of offices. And then we would then go out to a bid for the construction later, because we know we can do the salt and sand shed faster, as long as we know we're going to have space for it and we're not shoehorning it into a piece of property that we're not sure exactly where the office building will fit then. So we want to make sure we cover off the parking requirements for the public building, etc. So again, I wouldn't say that we're on the fast track to that building any longer. We know we're probably not looking at being in a building until next year, potentially even the fall of next year. But at this point, we definitely need to start looking at some design work at least, so that we know what the parameters of the property are going forward, so that we can move forward with the Public Works sand shed, because it has been in the budget. The salt sand shed has been in the budget for the last 3 years, and we still have never moved on it. So it needs to take a priority this year for sure, before we're running out of space at the facility we have now.
I look forward to seeing the layouts when you get to that. It's a great idea to move forward. You want to have that plan in place on what the future going to look like on that property, and then decide which phase you start where. So I look forward to seeing that when you get through that. So thank you.
Great. Will, you had a comment?
Yeah, just as a further COVID-19 update. Obviously, right from the beginning of starting to meet electronically, we were doing it out of necessity. Certainly, council had hoped to meet in person for as long as we possibly could, and it no longer was an option with the county building. We have had some further discussion with the county. They're not prepared at this time to provide us the opportunity to meet there yet, but looking for some feedback from council as to how you feel about starting to look at meeting again, possibly even for our June 3rd meeting. We do have other options for meeting location within the township. I believe with council there, Karen and myself, possibly even other staff members, will have to measure things out, but I believe we could find a facility where we could all be in one room. Obviously, there's the consideration about the public. Could we distance depending on that scenario? At this point, we had potentially had a public meeting scheduled for June the 3rd. It doesn't appear that that's going to occur now. So members of the public may not necessarily be as active in coming to our next meeting, but wanted to have that discussion with council. Do you feel we're in a position to consider meeting in person again? Do you want to continue to meet, certainly as of June 3rd, electronically? Again, just looking for some feedback on that. Obviously, if we do have another facility, it won't be set up with the audio visual stuff that we have now. So it'll take some time to set up a room, make sure it's all measured out. Don't want to go to that if council really isn't comfortable yet meeting in person.
All right, thank you for raising that. Concerns, start with Karen.
This will be news to Will. I hadn't had a chance to tell him yet. We may potentially have two big reports coming to the June 3rd agenda. One would be the service delivery review. I had a 3-hour phone conversation this morning with the other CAOs, and I know that the hope was to bring the service delivery review report with some recommendations that we've been able to jointly agree on to the meeting, first meeting in June for everybody. So the goal would be our June 3rd meeting, and county council would see it on the 10th, I believe. However, and then the other report that would be coming forward on June the 3rd that Will may or may not have mentioned it to him is the asset management plan update. Public Sector Digest has done the draft. Stephanie and I have gone over it a couple of times with some refinements. We have agreed with PSD that the update plan will stay in draft format because we're going to do the additional work that we budgeted for to bring in facilities, fire, and fleet into the asset management plan as well. So, but Matt from PSD would like to present the draft report to council as well at the June 3rd meeting. So he could do it via Zoom if we wanted him to, or he could come in person, whichever council would prefer. He will be doing it via PowerPoint regardless, so that you can see the draft report, understanding that it would be received for information at that time because there will be amendments to it with the updates coming with the fire facilities and fleet. Sorry, Will.
No worries.
Okay, so given that, I think as Will and I chatted, the opportunity for the Interkip Community Center, large room, easy to be spaced out, but it would allow that physical presence, not taking away from this, and the fact that the public can actually view at a later time. I was hoping that the county would equip their facility such that we could do recording. I mean, Rogers is there for county council, but just the daytime meeting. Could we take over that equipment and just have a Fanshawe student run it so that whoever was hosting a meeting there, it could be broadcast, recorded, uploaded to YouTube. But as Will said, that's not in the cards for June the 3rd. There's nothing preventing us. It's a meeting, it's not a social gathering, so that 5 people is not a concern. We are an essential service, so we can do that. Will's pointed question is, do we want to? Do you think that would help us in our discussion deliberations, or is this a better way? It's really our role in governance is to ensure that we have good discussion for the best decision-making outcomes, and to do that in a transparent way.
Feedback?
Thoughts? Councillor Rudy.
I think I'm probably good either way. If the anxiety is getting relaxed now, if we're safe in a public forum, if it's the Interkip Community Center, then I'm good either way. If the council's fine, I'm fine on a Zoom call too, so I'm good both ways for me personally.
Thank you.
I think public meeting, 2 more weeks, things can change. It can get better or worse, I guess. But I think we're on a good trend right now. And, I think it should be something we could consider. For sure.
Matthew.
Does the Interkip Community Center have a strong enough internet for us to do an in-person meeting with our computers set up to stream this way as well?
Do we know that, Will?
don't. I
I-
don't know how strong it is. I would assume it's good because of the library being there. I would assume, but
Okay, Karen?
I think with the addition of the phone, so that when the phone system was brought up, they actually went out and did some equipment updates at the ICC so that we could have the internet phone there as well. So I believe that there has been some improvement to the internet at the ICC as well. The county library is there and they're on the same phone system. So I think that you might find that the connectivity is significantly better there now.
Okay,
Even if we just had one device that could provide video of the group and audio as a way to help and use both formats to our advantage.
okay.
But I think in person at the community center would be a good route for the next meeting.
Excellent. Karen?
I'll add one more thing. Our auditor is almost done, our 2019 audit already. She was in touch with us this week. She'll be making an in-person visit to the office on June 2nd, hopefully to finalize any outstanding details. And she would like to attend the June 17th council meeting to bring our 2019 audit to council as well. So one way or another, we're going to have delegations starting to want to come to our meetings. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well.
And Will and I had talked about that. It might be a good opportunity with a lighter agenda to run a trial. And as Matthew has suggested, can we do some video recording so that the public can view it at a later date as well? So that might not be a bad idea. I thought for a moment you were going to suggest the auditor wanted to buy us lunch on the 3rd, but not covered in the expenses. Councillor Schaefer.
Yeah, I have no problem with an in-person meeting. I think it'd be a good idea to hold it in Interkip if we can do it. No problem with that.
Okay, Councillor Lupton.
It really doesn't affect me one way or the other. You know, where I live now, it's a very nervous group of people who have been in self-isolation for close to 10 weeks now, most of us 8 weeks.
Are they going to lock the doors if you leave?
No, but you weren't, I did say we sent 2 people to hospital this week for testing. So that was a bit of a scare for us.
Right.
No, I am able to go in and out. My family won't let me go some places I'd like to go do. They keep insisting doing it for me. But no, would there have to be extra cleaning afterwards from a meeting? Like, I mean, what happens?
yeah, I would say we would have some cleaning following the meeting.
It'd have to be something, I think.
For sure. Like, I think there would be those extra costs. We may have to talk with the normal hall cleaners and see if they could do another really good clean of the room. I think that would only be appropriate. Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing on television today, and they showed people sitting at a meal and passing food and one thing and another, and how what they had sprayed on the one lady's hands showed up not only on all the things that they touched, but even on their faces and their clothes of the other people sitting at the table. So there is, I mean, if there's nobody there that has the virus, that's fine. If you have someone that is there, that could be a problem. But I understand the need to get together physically. That's important.
And Will, does we had the special meeting to permit the electronic meetings. Does our bylaw permit one person to electronically connect?
Yes, absolutely. I think that was one of the biggest advantages to the change we made. It could be one, it could be two, it could be none meeting electronically with the group that's meeting in person.
Right. So to Councillor Gillespie's point, it would actually work if we were all had our laptops the screen could look like it is now, even though you can raise your head and see the rest of council staff around you.
Yeah, the only thing that might be funky, and I'm just thinking about this as we're talking about it, would there be feedback in the room? Like would you hear other people's?
There would be feedback in a room like that with 7 computers for sure. I've had the issue here, and even the other night I could hardly stream because we had an extra computer on. So I had 4 devices on Zoom from the broadcast location, and we had a little trouble with it buffing and falling behind. It was windy out and my internet wasn't that strong, but I think the more you add on at one location, the weaker the signal gets. Is that not how it works?
But I think I'd be confident with the library there that there's enough connectivity to handle an extra 10 computers. I guess all the more reason to proceed on June the 3rd and see, like, we'll never know until we try.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is a crucial meeting with expectations for a decision requiring public input, and then have technological challenges and people say, hey, I wasn't able to access, or a counselor wasn't able to connect. That would be very unfortunate. So there's always a risk, but June 3rd could be an opportunity to try that. Will?
Right. So definitely we can try it. One of the backup plans, again, I'm just thinking this through as we're having the discussion. I wonder what it would be like for, again, Margaret, should you not feel like you wish to go to the meeting for whatever reason, we'll just pick on Margaret for this example. Could you have the computer open and it's at least to the mayor, right? So it would at least see the chair. So somebody could follow that along. And then we'll say it's Margaret or anybody else. It could be myself. So say I'm not there for some reason. Dawn could at least see me. And so I would be participating. And then the public could still see at least Dawn. So
why could you not,
comments around the room?
why could you not just project this image onto the wall on a projector so that you can see who's ever there? Margaret may not be able to see the rest of the group, but everybody can see who's speaking.
Right.
Right. Or that. There's got to be some way of doing that.
Karen?
At the federal government level, I don't know if you guys have watched a lot of the news conferences that they do, but they will often have a lot of the ministers lined up, and then they will have a television screen with the minister that's not in attendance, that isn't physically in the room, but is able to converse with the press, etc. So, I mean, again, we'll pick on Will. If Will chose to do it remotely, we could have a laptop set up with it open to the room so that Will could be seen, so people can see Will's head on a table, and Will is able to put up his hand just like he would right now on Zoom and raise his concern, and the mayor would be able to see Will raising his concern because he could see his image on the laptop at the table that was designated for Will.
Right. So I think the concern is if we were to do a Zoom, that the feedback, because the computer, the laptop will pick up the person beside you talking as well. So it's easy to mute and be silent. It's, yeah, how much other feedback will be there. The video is not a problem. I think it's more the audio, making sure that that's clear.
So I have my two computers are 30 feet apart, and if we don't turn the volume down on the phone that I'm using for a mic, we have feedback.
Okay.
So that's just an idea how touchy it is actually when you're all in the same room. The other thing we could do is put a cell phone on a wide angle view on some sort of stand, and we could just video the whole meeting with all of us. You know, the further back you put the phone, the more you should be able to see the whole room. It's not ideal, but.
And then how do we pick up the audio strong enough to? Yeah,
Rather than
Keeping
have a
in
video
mind that-
camera.
Keeping in mind, 3 months ago, we were physically present and there was no public for the most part. So I think as we've experienced this, we've experienced the public actually taking time to look and see what council is doing. It's hard to, so now we want the best of both worlds. So I think we're gonna have to trial and error and see what we can do. But I think that's part of the pioneering spirit in East Zorra. So if we're willing as council, I think we can give the go ahead to Will and say, aim for it. And if it can't be pulled off, we're comfortable with Zoom, no problem. But if it can be, let's take the risk and see how it can work out. Councillor Lupton?
Well, don't get the wrong impression. I would be delighted to have a reason why I could go out somewhere and get away for a little while, you know, and I do. I mean, so, but it's the coming back to the group and that is a little worrisome for some of them. So I'll give it some thought, but as you know, it's not me personally. It's
No.
They're very nervous here.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure. No,
And it wouldn't be a surprise if you came back and the doors were locked.
They'd be sorry.
Leave the window unlocked.
Yeah, I have a balcony.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Gillespie.
Something we may have to invest in to avoid a lot of stuff is headsets. If everyone had an earpiece and a mic that they were working with, then volume and mic in the same room wouldn't have any effect on feedback.
Excellent point.
And that feedback's an issue, getting together and hosting a meeting using this same form of media. A couple inexpensive headsets would potentially solve those issues as well.
Thank you. And Karen can bring that up to your team. Maybe there's some hidden talent one of your staff had that could pull that together for us. All right, thanks for the update and the discussion on COVID-19. Other and unfinished business, any other questions? I had sent an email through, just wondering if anything's happening, Interkip washrooms to the park. Again, this was potentially last year, didn't happen. And then this year, it seems like an ideal time when the park's not being utilized. So just asking for an update, if anything. Will?
For sure. So I can provide a brief update on that. Did talk to John Shear. He's been sort of quarterbacking this project. To be honest with you, it's been an issue of time up until this point. We will have a few more resources coming on board through Claire. So maybe an opportunity then for John to maybe better focus his attention towards it. Fully agreed. It's a great time to do it with the park, obviously less busy. And frankly, maybe the opportunity for contractors who might be interested in a project like that too. So absolutely still there, ready to move ahead. It's simply been an issue of time. So I would imagine shortly, John will be able to pick that project back up again.
And very subtly, it does feed into Karen's concern of getting a master recreation plan and the resources to oversee all our rec facilities. So not lost on me is that, and again, that's our governance to ensure that the resources are there. So a project like this that no one's arguing with, but we just don't have the manpower to pull it off. And as Will mentioned early on, or Karen mentioned, the building department has just been even busier than last year, like incredibly so. So we can't expect miracles out of that. Their first priority is looking after the permits and inspections and keeping that going. So, all right, are there other questions, unfinished business? Okay, then we're ready for a confirming bylaw, mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Evanston, Councillor, 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 Councillor,
Moved by Deputy Mayor Edmiston, seconded by Councillor Rudy. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-16, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, be read a first, second, and third time this 20th day of May 2020. And further, that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. And adjournment, mover and seconder. Councillor Schaefer and Councillor Lupton.
Moved by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Lupton. Be it resolved that council does now adjourn at 8:05 p.m.